Are you a successful IT professional and need help optimizing your compensation plan, navigating your taxes, investments, and protection? It's time to rewire and retire with Mike. Listen in as Mike gets you the answers you need to move forward. Now, on to the show with Mike.
Hello and welcome to Rewire and Retire with Mike Guarino. Mike, how are you, man?
I'm well. How are you, Eric?
Doing fantastic. That's pretty much my standard response these days. Fantastic.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah, it was a good weekend. How was your weekend?
Busy with lots of little projects, but
Me
good.
too.
The weather turned nice finally out here in Jersey, and got some stuff done. So it was great.
Good to hear. I know that we are in the middle of a 5-part series, if I'm not mistaken. It's like a little mini series here. And why don't you give the audience a reminder of what we're covering as far as what the whole theme of the 5-part series is and what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, thank you. The 5-part mini-series is about the benefits of financial planning. And the goal is to cover, 2 to 3 topics each week for a bunch of weeks. So we get it all done in a timely fashion. And, last week we went over defining goals as the first step. So if you're working with an advisor or even by yourself, define your goals. Like, what are you looking to accomplish? Step 2 that we went over last week was we'll know if your goals are realistic for your time frame. And I think we hammered those 2 down pretty well. The other 2 that I want to cover today is financial planning will, see how we can bring your spending in line with your goals. And I'll touch on that a little bit because we have to kind of recap step 2 to talk about step 3. So real fast, if your goals are unrealistic, maybe spending is the issue. Right? Maybe I want to buy a yacht, but I'm spending too much money now, and you work with someone and they determine, well, if you cut back on X, Y, and Z, the yacht is affordable. So we're going to talk about bringing spending in line with your goals.
Okay.
And the other one I want to cover today, Eric, is show you if there's any money mistakes you're making. Financial planning sheds light on that a lot. So often I meet with clients, and we'll go into this in detail, that don't realize that they're making mistakes or overspending or under contributing and things like that. So I'm excited to talk about the stuff we have today because I think it's very relevant.
All right. Yeah. So let's start in it. So helping your clients to see how you can bring your spending in line with your goals. I mean, obviously I agree 100%. That's very important as a coach. I'm all about goal setting and having realistic goals and realistic expectations of what your goals can be is a huge piece of it. But this financial piece is so important because you may have those goals, like you said, but they may be unattainable just because you don't have a good handle on what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And the funny part is, so we're really going to talk about spending and is your spending in line with your goals. But the very first thing you have to really tether to the ground or nail down is what's the time horizon for this? And people say, well, time horizon, what the heck does that mean? It's basically the amount of time that you have to accomplish a goal. And I'll give you an example. There's a lot of different time horizons out there. There's college, right? So make an assumption. I'm 25 years old, 30 years old, married, just had my first child. Now my brain starts going, oh boy, I got to save for college. Oh boy, I'm saving for my retirement. 2 totally distinct, different time horizons. Your retirement at a 30-year-old, let's just say, is about 35 years if you retire at the, air quotes, traditional age of 65. Getting junior educated, wow, well, that's going to be here in 17, 18 years, right? So that's 2 distinct time horizons. And the reason that's important, that's where we always have to start with any goal. How much time do we have to work towards this goal? Then we know how much assets or money to feed that goal. Going back to what we talked about last week, goals can be realistic or unrealistic. So we have to be careful with that too. So time horizons are extremely important. I kind of identified what those were just now. Now we look at, okay, is it realistic or is it unrealistic? And do we have to bring your spending in line with your goals? The one thing I will throw out there, Eric, and I'm often asked this question, going back to that example of the 30-year-old. I just had this conversation last week. Guy is almost exactly 30 and just had a kid and we're doing a plan. It's perfect, right? And I commended him. I'm like, look, you're doing the right thing at the right time. So we looked at his 401k and we made some allocation changes in his 401k at work. And then we went over, saving for college and how 529 plans can be very effective for that. And again, pinning two different time horizons. Well, he was confused. He's like, why am I more aggressive in my, college savings plan right now than I am in my 401k at work? I said, well, because that goal is going to be here faster, so we have to accumulate more assets in a shorter time frame. Mm-hmm. That was his aha moment. So he goes, oh, I get it. But the one thing I want to point out, because I'm always asked this question, or almost always, do I save for college ahead of my retirement? Take a guess at what the answer is.
No.
Very good guess, right?
Thank you.
No. Well, and I'm going to just ask you, so we'll play a little game here. So
Sure.
Why not? Why not?
Well, because your retirement is something you have to spend money for, and you have to accumulate that money to be able to spend it. College, you're going to be able to take out loans. You can't get a loan for retirement. That's one thing. If something went wrong, you've got to be able to make sure your retirement is secured, because, again, you can't take loans out to pay for retirement, whereas push come to shove, there are other options with college planning.
Exactly. And I couldn't say it any better. You said exactly the line I use. You only have one shot at retirement. There's no loans, grants, or scholarships available for your retirement. Mm-hmm. You either have enough assets accumulated or you don't. College, on the other hand, some kids don't go to college, right? That's number one. Number two, scholarships, grants, loans. Maybe grandma and grandpa are funding for college. I see that a lot of times in my practice. The grandparents call me up and say, hey, Mike just had a baby. We want to, on the down low, we want to fund the 529 for him, which I think is the greatest gift a grandparent can give to a child, is to secretly fund a 529 for them. And then when they get to that moment where, maybe they're a freshman in high school, the grandparents break it to the parents, which are their children, right? Hey, mm-hmm. we saved up X amount for junior's college. You wouldn't believe the amount of pressure that takes off a person who's been saving for college to know that someone else has been contributing towards it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so time horizons are extremely important, and understanding how assets have to be allocated according to that time horizon. We talked about that earlier, right? Someone who has a shorter time horizon needs to be aggressive earlier and kind of cool that off as we head towards, we'll use the example for college, right? So out of the gate, investments are very aggressive, and over time they get a little bit more conservative, to the point when the child's ready to go to college, or I guess the adult now, right, is ready mm-hmm. to go to college. They have assets that are kind of, if they're in the lifestyle funds or the age-based funds, they're cooled off a lot. They've cooled off as far as being aggressive, and now they're tilting towards the conservative side, because we've accomplished the goal. Now it's predictability. We want to know that nest egg for college is there. And the same with retirement, right? We save and save and save for retirement. We retire at air quotes 65. I see a lot of people working beyond that because they want to, actually. But then when we get to retirement, we, immediately we want to cool off our assets, which is kind of good and kind of bad, because you got to be really careful. Because, Eric, the one thing I'm seeing in my practice is people are living a lot longer. Right? The 65-year-old is living 20, 30 years beyond that. Mm-hmm. In the old world, you could retire and say, hey, Mike, throw all my money into bonds. I'm getting out of stocks. I don't want the stock market volatility. Throw all my money in bonds. Well, bonds aren't paying much, man.
Yeah.
Interest rates are at all-time lows. There's a more likelihood that interest rates, will be going up before they go down. And that has its own set of risks involved with it. But you just can't do that anymore. So a good advisor is going to temper your time horizon, your asset allocation, specifically towards what goals you're working towards. Whether it be college, whether it be retirement, or, Eric, like you and me always talk about, let's buy that boat. Mm-hmm. Could I afford that big boat behind my house in the Florida Keys, or wherever your retirement takes you?
Exactly. So, Mike, this really begs the question, and I know that you've worked with clients for a very long time, but how do you bring someone's spending in line with their goals?
That's a great question. best way to answer that is, so often people don't know what they know that they're spending money, but they don't know how much. And when you sit down and, put pen to paper and do a financial plan, that's when light gets shed on it, right? Like somebody will say, oh my God, I had no idea I was spending that much on going out to eat, or I had no idea that, my car payment plus insurance plus was equaling this per month. I just write the bills out and I wasn't really keeping track. So that's the one thing that, we have to pay attention to is our spending in line with our goals. Because if we're spending more money now and at the sacrifice of not saving that money or investing that money or putting that money away, you can run into trouble down the road. So a financial plan is a roadmap, and it sheds light onto a lot of subjects that I think people don't really realize, quite frankly. So spending and keeping that in check is important. I like to take an agnostic approach when I break that to people. Like, I don't want to be judgmental, like, oh, gee, you're spending a lot, or, oh, gee, you're not spending enough, or, I don't like to, put judgment on that. What I like to do is just bring to light and say, hey, does $8,500 a month sound like a lot to you? And you get the reaction. They'll be like, I don't know. And then I'll say, well, let's put it this way. Your liquid, disposable income at the end of every month is $10,000, and you're spending 85% of that. Do you think that's a lot? And then you have this conversation, right? And that's when people start kind of leaning forward in their chairs and they're waiting for you to say something non-judgmental, remind you, but it's important that they understand and can kind of answer that question for themselves and say, wow, yeah, 85% of my take home is a lot. And then we can have conversations like, okay, here's ways to make it better. Because you never want to hurt someone's feelings, that's the thing. But a good advisor is always going to tell their prospects or clients the truth. So, and there's tactful ways and non-tactful ways to do it, right? Remember, when your girlfriend in high school would break up with you, right? There's tactful ways to do that and non-tactful ways to do it, right? Hanging up a banner, at the pep rally, it says, Mike, we're done. Yeah. It's probably not the most tactful way of doing it, right?
Straight to the point, however.
Yeah, right. And I'm not saying that happened, by the way.
Yeah, no, we won't talk about that.
No.
No, absolutely. I think that's, again, there is no judgment, but, when somebody's subscribing to Emu Egg of the Month Club and, they're spending $4,000 on that, do you really need that many? And is it worth it compared to the goals that you want? Is that Emu Egg going to keep you from getting that boat that you want? It's just all about reevaluating it. Shoot, if they just absolutely just cannot live without the emu eggs, then by all means, keep it.
Yeah.
But just sounds like that the boat may be a little bit smaller. That's okay.
Yeah. Or the Emu Egg Club of the Month is keeping you from building a nice nest egg. And, there's the dichotomy. There's the disconnect, right? There's the scales are uneven. So, a lot of times we just try to kind of bring that to light. And what's interesting is, once you, like I said earlier, like people lean in and start listening when you say stuff like you're spending 85% of your take-home money on the Egg of the Month Club, wine bottles, and, pajamagrams or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no, that's just fine if that's your thing.
Hey, but there's nothing wrong with that, right? But if it's getting in the way of your goals, that's where we have to have the conversation. So. Yeah. I know I said just a minute ago that it's important that you break it to them gently. And once you get them to realize, oh, wow, that's a lot. Now we turn to the M word, which is mistakes, which is my fourth point of the mini series today. The financial plan is going to show you money mistakes that you're making. And I find a lot of people make mistakes without realizing it. Nobody's doing it intentionally, but they don't realize it. I'm often asked a lot of times like, wow, well, I don't want to have a mortgage payment when I'm retired. And I'm going to be like, okay, then why do you want to pay the house off? Well, I just don't want to have a mortgage payment. Okay, but you realize your mortgage is only costing you, 3.5% to 4% a year. And look at the historical rates of return of the stock market, way higher than that. So I say to a person, you're kind of paying off the cheapest debt you're ever going to have. Not saying that's a mistake if that's really what you want to do, but I bring it to light to say that's opportunity cost. You're paying off your house, something that's costing you very little in interest, and you're foregoing investing that money into, let's say, your 401k for the next 20 or 30 years. Well, there's a big trade-off there. And I just try to make my clients aware that they understand what they're doing. Because like I said, not everybody realizes they're making mistakes. You know, it's a good one, Eric. I'll tell you this one. A lot of times I call my clients on their birthdays, right? Happy birthday, Mr. Client or Mrs. Client. You just turned 50. And they're like, oh, thanks. You know, we're having a big party. We're going here. We're going there. We're going to do this. And I say, hey, can I tell you about a present that you can give yourself right now? And they're like, what is that? I go, you now have the ability to contribute to your 401k and put in a catch-up contribution, or your IRA and put in a catch-up contribution. A lot of people don't realize that. And that's a lot of money over the next, if you're going to retire at 65 and you learn about this at 50, you have 15 years to pack that money away. And it's significant over those years. So money mistakes are honest mistakes a lot of times. And I just find that it's great to shed light on that, because you really find you're helping people when you identify those mistakes in a non-judgmental manner.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And again, I think we all need that in our lives, somebody that can just speak truth to us in a non-judgmental way. And I appreciate the fact that you're doing that for your clients on a daily basis. And for anybody who gives you a call, after they get done listening to this podcast, for instance, and needs to see, hey, am I making some of those mistakes that you're talking about? Is this something that I can shore up my retirement, or, get introduced to new concepts like being able to make catch-up payments and things like that to the 401k? Those are outstanding ways to get a good jump on what your goals are. And those conversations come naturally, I know, with the clients that you currently have. How do you introduce those conversations to maybe prospects?
Yeah, so the way we meet with prospects is that they're usually referred to us by our existing client base. And if they're coming to you, they realize they haven't really said this to themselves. They're consciously been aware of it. There's pain there. There's something wrong, or something just isn't sitting right with them about their current situation. If they're working with an advisor, or they never have worked with an advisor, there's just something nagging at them, that they had a conversation with their friend is my client, and they said, hey, give Mike a call. The way I go about it, Eric, and I think we talked about this, is we meet briefly on the phone, to do like a 20-minute, 30-minute, just quick, hey, let's see if I can help. And then the second step, usually in a non-COVID-19 world, right, we would bring them into the office and do a face-to-face meeting where we really drill down on trying to find out why they're meeting with me, right? Yeah. There's something there, and it's my goal to identify what's there. And what I find a lot of times is I just don't know what I'm doing, or am I doing this right? Or I've never used an advisor, or my past advisor, retired, and I'm looking for someone new. One of our first and foremost responsibilities as financial advisors is KYC, know your client, right? So I have to understand what this person's looking for, because the last thing I want to do is bring somebody on board that's not a good fit. And between that initial phone call and about an hour face-to-face meeting, we're doing them via Zoom, Skype, and all the other popular, collaboration softwares online. After that, I have a really good feeling if I can help the person or not. And I'm honest. I'll say, look, and I'll recap. You told me that you're not sure if you're saving enough for retirement. Your kids are out the door. You don't want to work until you're 75 years old. So you're taking a hard look at things, and you're 55 years old with potentially 10 years left to go. Quite honestly, they're a little bit late in the game, but we try to work it through. And if they are a good fit, and if I know I can help them, I'll bring it to their attention and say, hey, let's take this to the next step. Not to sound like a broken record, but financial plans, as we just indicated, shed light on so many things. Yeah. Mistakes being made. Are they saving enough? Are their goals realistic with their time horizon? All the stuff we've covered, Eric. So that's how I kind of handle it. They come through the door. We have a process that we bring them through, realize if we're a good fit for each other or not, and then I lay it at their feet. Here's what we can learn by doing financial planning for you. Maybe we can prevent mistakes. Maybe we can enhance the good things that you're already doing. And that's kind of how we take those relationships forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, one of the first steps that they could do is listen to the rest of these podcasts, because you're covering the 10 benefits of financial planning Everybody needs to hear this, even if they're a current client of any advisor, just so they can have a refresher on what they should be covering when they meet with their advisor. And if I'm just going to speak to the audience here. If, again, you are with an advisor and as you're listening to these podcasts, your advisor isn't addressing these issues or talking to you or even asking you these very important questions, it's time to find a new advisor or get your advisor to do their job correctly. And that's just my opinion, Eric's opinion here. But I firmly believe that, because every advisor needs to have the best interest of their clients in mind and bring them hard truth sometimes. And I think that's what we all want and need. Even if we don't like to hear it, we know that it's very important. So, Mike, thank you so much. I know that we want to wrap up this podcast and every podcast with a gaze into that crystal ball you've got. And I'm excited because I heard you actually upgraded your crystal ball. Is that correct?
I think you upgraded it for me, but yeah, sure.
Well, is it any better at predicting things?
No, it's a really cool sound, but it's still doing the same job as the last one.
Okay, well, let's take a look.
I see markets going up and markets going down. I see second quarter earnings coming out late this month, early next month, and a lot of unhappy faces.
Mm-hmm.
It's just gone dark on me. I can't see anymore.
That's it. Okay. Well, ugly faces. Got it. It's not a crystal ball. Oh, unhappy, not ugly. Okay, unhappy faces.
No.
Yeah,
No.
There's a difference there. But yeah, unhappy faces. I know the earnings stuff we've talked about in the past and the reports that are going to be coming out. And I think everybody does have a pretty clear picture, even if they don't have their own crystal ball, that a lot of these companies just aren't going to be able to post the numbers that people were hoping for pre-COVID,
Right.
obviously. So
Exactly.
something to be aware of. Mike, thank you so much. Any closing thoughts for today?
No, Eric, I'm really excited to bring people down the financial planning journey because we're doing this over a series of weeks. I think it's going to keep building, one block at a time and really give people a clear idea of what it's like to have a plan in place. And I'm excited for that. Whether you do it with me, your own advisor, or if you get, like Eric said, get your advisor to, get off the blocks and create a financial plan for you. It's super important. Identifying mistakes early, making sure your goals are realistic. Those are all great things to know, so you can make corrections and you can make, adjustments. Remember, this weekend we just saw the SpaceX put a rocket into orbit and met up with the International Space Station, right? And they're docking with it. Well, if that thing was off by an inch on the launch pad, do you think it would have been able to successfully get to its goal?
Probably not.
Right. And that's what financial planning does. It helps us adjust things now before we're taking off to make sure that we're able to meet our goals. I just thought I'd use a relevant, kind of symbolism for that.
Absolutely. You got to have enough fuel to get you to the end result. And that's kind of where you specialize. So
Godspeed.
Absolutely. I have one final thought, and that is people listening to this probably want to reach out to you. How do they get a hold of you?
Sure. So I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. Mike3 at GuarinoWealth.com. I'll spell that for you. It's MIKE, the number 3 at Guarino, G like George, UARINO wealth.com. I'd love to talk to you. Take you through our process, see if we're a good fit. And if we are, I would love to do a plan and make your goals as possible as they can be.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate your time today, brother.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it, man.
You bet. And I want to thank you, the listening audience, to tuning in and listening to the Rewire and Retire podcast with Mike Guarino. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Mike comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thanks so much for listening today. For everyone at Guarino Wealth Management, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on the Rewire and Retire podcast. If you want to learn more about how we can help troubleshoot your financial and retirement strategies, click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Guarino Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Investing involves risk, including loss of principal. There is no guarantee that a diversified portfolio will enhance overall returns or outperform a non-diversified portfolio. Diversification does not protect against market risk. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA/SIPC.